This is in the aftermath of the 3 attacks that Catherine referenced. It's in the aftermath of the intelligence community noting that a lot of the internet traffic says we're going to change Ramadan from a month of peace to the month of calamities for non-believers, and there'll be rewards at the end of that. It's taken in concert with July 4th. Ever since 9/11, we've always been conscious of the concern around these national holidays, but I don't think that the very dismissive attitude by the White House is terribly helpful.
Former Homeland Security Chief Tom Ridge there talking while video played next to him of the terror attack in Tunisia, addressing these 4th of July terror warnings we've heard so much about. Federal authorities tell us that local law enforcement officials across the country are on high alert for terror attacks or potential terrorists. And joining us right now is Kris Paronto, former Army Ranger and co-author of the book 13 Hours in Benghazi, about the attack and what he and his fellow Annex security team members did to try and save 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. Kris, always great to talk with you.
You too, John. Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Kris. I wanted to get your take. You know, we saw this overwhelming response to what everyone thought was an active shooter situation at the D.C. Navy Yard. Of course, there was an attack there 2 years ago. Right. But when you see this in connection with all we're hearing from Tom Ridge and a lot of members of Congress about these warnings around the 4th of July weekend, do you think the response was appropriate?
Yeah, actually, I do think the response was appropriate. You do have to come in with overwhelming force to try to stop any sort of an active shooter or any sort of attack at all. You always want to have that advantage. That gives you a better advantage of being successful. The problem is that we're being reactive again and not proactive. So it's great to come in after the fact, but if there was an active shooter there, he or she could have killed 4 or 5 people before the troops got there to shut them down. So we've got to be more proactive. We can't just be responding to attacks, because by the time we respond to attack, Benghazi is a perfect example, people are already dead. Well, if we're not proactive, we don't try to stop them.
How do you be more proactive? How can you do that?
Well, I think, first of all, it's just physical security. Having people on site, I know people, all the gun nuts out there don't like people to, or anti-gun nuts don't like us to having security or armed personnel on particular bases or in schools or so forth. But I think that's necessary. I think you do need to have a physical response, just a deterrent that guys are out there, so it makes people think twice before attacking the facility. And second of all, the intelligence, you've got to have correct. You got to be observant in your areas. You got to have a lot of people that are watching and being observant and seeing things that are out of the ordinary in particular facilities, and but especially in D.C. and you know this, John, D.C. and in the East Coast, people go on with their daily lives. Right. They're in their bubble. They have their blinders on, and that doesn't help. People need to expand their horizons and just be more aware of their surroundings. I think just in general, and we don't see that too much because people are just in their own little worlds, on doing their daily life and not concerned about other people. Sure,
so
and that hurts.
When you say that people should be more observant, what should we be observant to? Like,
well,
what should be
you just think sure. I mean, if you're coming into you're coming into your news office, or you're coming into your building, you know who's supposed to be around there. You know when something looks out of the ordinary, and instead of just paying it no mind and saying, "Oh, this looks out of the ordinary," but I don't think, and I'm telling people to be overzealous in reporting suspicious activity, but you have to at least be able to see what suspicious activity is, and then say, hey, if there's security out there, say there's a guy out there that I don't recognize, can you go check him out? Or another avenue is getting the proper amount of security at your facilities. So when there is something going on, they're monitoring that activity for you. That's their job. But just keeping your head on a swivel is what we like to say. You're looking around, you're making sure that there aren't people that there aren't supposed to be there. There maybe aren't packages or things that you see that are not supposed to be there, and then you report them. Yeah. And you feel okay about doing that. You don't feel like you're.
Well, this is a good reminder, Kris. This is what it's come to. We all have to do this. I know you did that when you were on patrol as an Army Ranger and also working as a private security contractor as well. We'll talk more with Kris Paronto when we come right back. First, we're going to do some more headlines from stories we got to let you know about. But Kris will be back with us right after this. We continue our conversation now with former Army Ranger Kris Paronto, also co-author of 13 Hours in Benghazi, the real story of what took place on September 11th, 2012. Kris, great to have you back with us. We wanted to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about the new Benghazi movie coming up, but I wanted to ask your get your take on this flag burning protest that we saw in New York City. I think a lot of folks were relieved that hundreds of people didn't show up to burn flags. Of course, in this country, you mentioned how free we are. We do have a constitutional right to ban flags if we so choose. But what's your take? We had one at LSU down in Louisiana as well at the university, where we had some activists show up and say, no, you're not going to burn the American flag. It's not appropriate. What do you think about this?
I see it as being glass half full. I don't think if you're a United States citizen, you shouldn't be burning the U.S. flag. I think you should have your citizenship revoked right then and there for the people that sacrificed and gave of themselves for the freedoms of this country. But I see it as half full when you see people start to show up and stop these things. To me, that's a positive. It means that there are still good people, good patriots out there that are supporting America and still believe in the values of this country. So I just see it as a positive. Right? You see people actually coming forward and standing up when these flag burnings try to go, and then you see New York. I thought it was hilarious. Nobody showed up. That was great. More reporters there than actual flag burners. So it hurts me that the media thinks that's an actual news story. That what bothers me a little bit. But I'm proud that there are still people out there that are willing to stand up and say, hey, no, this is wrong. You're a patriot, and we aren't burning these flags, and we're going to stand in front of you. I'd be there in a second if I was in New York as well.
Well, we just showed some clips of some social media posts from folks who showed up with water guns to douse the flames. We heard that from that gentleman that pulled the burning flag out of the grill there, and several groups showed up, including veterans bikers groups showed up there. And I agree with you to a certain extent. This is great that people showed up to stop burning the flag. I don't want to see these protests. But it's part of our fabric as a nation, though, to be able to do this. And I know that's why so many of you and your fellow service members, they fought for that type of freedom. Even though it's ugly, it's still part of America. We want to talk. We want to talk about the movie coming up. Hollywood director Michael Bay is coming out with this new sure-to-be blockbuster, 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. It's based on your book and your story. It's going to open over the Martin Luther King holiday weekend. How pumped are you to have people see this story presented in this way?
I think it's going to open the doors to a new crowd, a new audience that may have not read the book. The reason being is again, just like the book, it's apolitical. It's not a politically driven movie. Michael Bay worked his butt off. I've got to see him actually firsthand on the set working, and he's doing a great job. And the actors in there, Pablo Schreiber, Max Martini, Dominic Famusa, and Toby Stevens, we've got Dave Damon. They've got the characters down. They got us down. They got our personalities down, and I'm very excited. And it's focusing on the team, and that's why the title's changed to The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, because that was where the focal point is going to be. It's going to be on the members, on the 6 members. James Badgedale playing Ty. He's doing a great job. Well, I'm very excited.
And that's what we've talked so much about. So much of the conversation about Benghazi has been focused on Hillary Clinton and these personalities in Washington, D.C., when really we should be talking more about Chris Stevens and Glenn Doherty and the other guys that died and the folks that you worked with to try and protect them. And we know you're working on some stuff about Glenn, and you're working with veterans still. Give us a quick update on what you're doing and what you plan in the months ahead.
Sure. Well, I've got the okay from Glenn's sister to go ahead and assist or do events where I can help out Glenn Doherty Foundation. But I also do a lot of events and try to help out veterans foundations like the Special Operations Wounded Warriors. Also, the Willie Myers Fund. Willie Myers is a gentleman that was injured overseas, a contractor in Israel, and his government insurance didn't kick in for him, and he's paralyzed now, so he has nothing. So
these guys certainly need more advocates out there. And Kris, we thank you for your service. We thank you for everything you've done, and we thank you for what you continue to do for these vets that continue to need your service. So make sure everybody marks their calendar for the Martin Luther King weekend to go see 13 Hours in Benghazi. And of course, you can get the book right now. Kris Paronto, co-author of the book you see right here on your screen. It's available on Amazon.com. Always great to talk with you, Kris. Have a happy 4th of July weekend.